All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to tackle something that, let's be honest, can be a real challenge for so many of us. How do we teach new skills without all the stress and frustration that can sometimes come with it? We're going to break down a blueprint for success, a way to turn what feels like a complex, overwhelming routine into something that feels confident and ultimately independent.
But first, let's just start with the big question we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why is it so hard to get a new routine off the ground? We have all felt that resistance, that friction when we're trying to build a new habit, either for ourselves or for someone we're supporting. And man, it can be incredibly frustrating.
Well, it turns out it's not just you. There's a really good biological reason for that struggle. Our brains are, at their core, wired for predictability. They absolutely crave patterns and routines. Why? Because consistency lowers anxiety and it frees up a ton of mental energy. Think about it. When our brain isn't busy trying to guess what's coming next, it can actually relax and focus on what's important, learning. I absolutely love this analogy from the source material. Think of our habits as these paths that are literally grooved into our brains. Old habits, those are deep, well-worn trenches. They're the brain's default route. So when we try to build a new routine, we're basically trying to hack a brand new trail through a super dense forest, all while this easy, paved highway, our old habit, is sitting right there, just calling our name.
So how in the world do we compete with that super easy, well-worn path? Well, it all comes down to one single core principle that pretty much governs all of our motivation. And if you can get this one thing, everything else we're about to talk about is just going to click into place. It's what we call the effort and reward scale.
It's a beautifully simple but really powerful equation. On one side of the scale, you've got the effort a task requires, all the energy, the focus, the challenge, and on the other side, you have the reward. Now, for any person to be motivated to do anything, that reward has to feel like it outweighs the effort. It really is that simple. And this, right here, is such a critical insight. It reframes everything. When someone resists a task or says, "I don't want to," it's not defiance, it's data. They are literally communicating to you that from their perspective, the effort you're asking for feels way bigger than the reward you're offering. So our job isn't to just push harder, it's to figure out how to rebalance that scale. Okay, so knowing that, how do we actually build a session that gets this balance right from the very beginning? Let's look at the key building blocks, the nuts and bolts for creating a structure where people can really succeed.
Success starts long before the session even kicks off. It starts with the environment. As you can see here, really simple things can make a huge difference. Visual supports give us that predictability we were just talking about, which immediately lowers anxiety. Having a quiet area helps manage emotional regulation, and something as basic as having materials organized makes it easier for a person to be independent. A prepared environment really is the foundation for success.
And beyond just the physical space, these elements are absolutely key. We need clear, small goals to keep that effort side of the scale low. We need powerful, positive reinforcement to make the reward side high. And of course, scheduled breaks and a little variety keep things from getting monotonous. Just remember, structure isn't about being rigid. It's about being thoughtful and prepared.
Okay, let's get super practical now. How do we actually teach a complex, multi-step routine? Things like getting dressed or brushing teeth, tasks that can feel so overwhelming at first. Well, the answer lies in a really cool technique called chaining.
The very first step is something called a task analysis. Now, it sounds a little technical, but it's really just the simple process of breaking a big skill down into its tiniest little pieces. Brushing your teeth isn't one action, right? It's walk to the bathroom, pick up the toothbrush, get the toothpaste, open the cap, squeeze it on. Each of those little moments becomes a single achievable link in the chain.
Now, one of the most effective ways to teach that chain is a brilliant strategy called backward chaining. Here's how it works. Instead of starting at the beginning, you actually start at the end. So you'd help the person with every single step of brushing their teeth, and their only job is to do the very last step, say putting the toothbrush back in the holder. The second they do it, boom, they get the reward. This makes the effort tiny, but the reward is immediate. It creates this incredibly powerful link between their action and a successful outcome.
Of course, even when you have the best planned activities, just moving from one thing to the next can be a massive hurdle. Let's be honest. For many individuals, transitions are the most challenging, most stressful part of the day.
And here is a fantastic strategy for making those transitions a whole lot smoother. You let a neutral tool, like a timer, be the one to deliver the news. When the timer goes off, the activity is over. All of a sudden, the timer's the bad guy, not the parent or the therapist. This one simple shift can depersonalize the request and just dramatically reduce conflict. It's a game changer.
So, your transition toolkit should absolutely include things like timers, giving verbal countdowns to prime the individual for the change, referencing a visual schedule so they can physically see what's next, and using really clear first-then language. All these tools build that predictability right into the trickiest moments.
It's so easy to get focused on all these different tools and techniques, right? But it is absolutely crucial that we remember that the timers, the schedules, the chaining, they aren't about creating some rigid, robotic routine. They are all working toward one ultimate goal: independence.
You know, a lot of these strategies come from the field of applied behavior analysis, or ABA, and because of that, it's really important to bust a few common myths. Some people hear structured session and they immediately imagine something that's rigid and boring. But as you can see here, the reality of modern effective ABA is that it's flexible, it's fun, and it happens in the natural settings where these skills are actually going to be used.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. The structure is not the goal. The schedule is not the point. They are the scaffolding. They provide the safety net and the predictability that allows a person to learn and practice new skills until they have the confidence and the ability to do them all on their own.
So as we wrap up, let's really hold on to that idea. Structure is not the destination, it's the pathway. It's an incredibly powerful tool that makes learning accessible and effective. So the real question we should be leaving with is this: what new skills, what new doors to independence will you help build with it?